Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm back with part 3 of the 5-part series that I'm doing. This part's going to be about the Eastern Conference and the teams that I think that will make the playoffs. I'm going to be predicting how I think the teams will finish between the 8 and 1 seed. I'll just talk about a bit about how I think their teams will do in the upcoming season, the outlook for the teams, why I think that they'll be slotted where they are. I'll go over their starting lineup and some of their main players off the bench. And I'll talk about maybe what I think their record will be. I'm not going to do a definitive hard prediction of their win record, but just sort of like a general thing, the range I expect them to be in. So that being said, let's get into it. So going from descending to ascending order, the first team I have on here as the 8th seed is the Miami Heat. The Heat I don't expect to be great. I'm looking at around 41, 42 wins. They basically have the same cast coming back. Starting lineup's going to look something like probably at the 1 Goran Dragic, at the 2 Josh Richardson, the 3 Justice Winslow, the 4 James Johnson, the 5 probably Hassan Whiteside because they want to play him since he's getting paid so much. Off the bench, your main guys are going to be like Wayne Ellington, Dion Waiters, Dwayne Wade, Kelly Olynyk. It's a team with a deep bench, but that I think more reflects their weaker starting lineup rather than having a really strong bench. Outside of, I'd say, Dragic, and I think Whiteside's still a good player, even though he's gotten a lot of flack. So I'll say Dragic is about their best player. Whiteside's their second best player, and outside of that, they got all these guys that are just all right. If you're talking in terms of NBA 2K, it's a bunch of guys who you'd say are like 78 overall out of 100. Just like solid role players. And that being said, I think when you have an all-star and a solid center and then a bunch of role players in the weaker Eastern Conference, I think that's good enough to make the playoffs. You could say to yourself, like, what's the difference between a team like Charlotte, who also has like a good point guard and a bunch of role players? Honestly, I think the role players on Miami are just more talented, and I think that like Dwayne Wade is still a really quality NBA player despite slowing down. Dion Waiters, if he's healthy, I think will be an impact player. I like Josh Richardson a lot with his 3-and-D mentality. I think he's sort of like a young Trevor Ariza, really solid, and they just have a plethora of young, talented guys who are really promising, and aren't fully developed yet, but they might be pretty soon here. So moving on, as a 7th seed, I have the Detroit Pistons. I'm expecting around 43 wins for them. Nothing spectacular. I think having Reggie Jackson back will help a lot. He only played about 30 games last year, and he's now their 3rd best player. So having him for a whole season will, I think, bump their win total up a bit, which was around, I think, 36 last year, 37-ish, 38, something like that. So I think that they will be better from that. Main guys on the team, Andre Drummond at center, Blake Griffin power forward, Stanley Johnson starting probably at small forward, maybe Luke Kennard at shooting guard. That would be interesting to see. Reggie Jackson at the 1. Main guys at the bench are going to be like Ish Smith. He's going to be the 6th man. And besides that, really nobody that notable. But they do have a pretty solid core of guys right there. I think enough to make the playoffs. Not a strong bench whatsoever, but they do have two really high starters in Griffin and Drummond. I think 2 guys who are in the upper echelon of guys at their position. So I expect them to be pretty good. I think that the Reggie Jackson being healthy thing will be a bigger factor than people are considering right now. He's good for like 15, 16 points a night when healthy, along with 7 assists. So that being said, I think that they'll be a pretty decent team. Don't look for anything amazing from them, but look for them to put up some good. They're going to beat on the bad teams in the East a lot. That's how they're going to get in the playoffs. They won't be beating teams like Toronto very much or Boston, but they'll be consistently beating the teams like Charlotte, Orlando, New Jersey, Brooklyn. They'll be hammering those teams a lot, I think, because they're better than them. Basically, and the East is weak, so somebody has to make the playoffs, and I think they have enough talent to squeeze in there. Now at the 6th seed, I have a team that I think a lot of people would put a lot higher than this, but I'm putting them here just because it's what I've seen is what I've seen, and so that's why I'm doing it. The 6th seed, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. I think a lot of people I've heard would put them as like the 3 seed after Boston and maybe Philly or Toronto, depending on how you see it, but I have them at the 6. They've consistently underperformed about the last 2 to 3 years. I've been the guy who, before this prediction right here, I've thought that they had about the second most talented roster in the East, maybe tied with Philadelphia for the second most after Boston. But I don't know, Eric Bledsoe, their starting lineup's going to look like Eric Bledsoe, Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Middleton at the 3, Giannis at the 4, Brook Lopez at the 5. Main guys off the bench are going to be Tony Snell, sort of a plethora of point guards between Jason Terry and Matthew Dellavedova. John Henson's going to be on the bench for them. But outside of Giannis, this team, I don't know. I like Chris Middleton a lot. He's good for 20 points a night, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Shoots really well from 3, really good defense. Eric Bledsoe really needs to have a bounce-back season. Ever since he got traded to Milwaukee, he's underperformed a bit. But they need the guy that averaged like 20 points a game with 6 assists in Phoenix. They need that guy who shot it better than 45% from the field. I don't expect a ton from Brook Lopez. Maybe 12 points a game would be nice. And Malcolm Brogdon, same, about 13 points a game would be nice, 14. Giannis, I expect to see about 30, 10, and 7 from him. But yeah, this team has all the talent. They just find ways to lose a lot of times, it feels like. Like they could have beaten Boston last year in the 7-game series. They had their opportunities. They didn't do it. Again, they have a lot of talent on this roster. They just underachieve. Hopefully Budenholzer can change their not their mojo. Well, yeah, maybe, I guess their mojo. Just change their attitudes and their mentalities and help them to become a more focused team that doesn't make as many mistakes in the clutch. They sort of remind me of like the Eastern Conference version of what the Clippers were when they had Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and all them. Like really talented, they just underachieve. Okay, so I would say that they'll probably win around 46 games, I'm thinking. Okay, so going on, next I have is the 5 seed Washington. Now Washington's a team that's sort of similar to me in Milwaukee in that I really beat the drum for them. I think that they're super talented, and I've always thought, like last year, I thought that they should be like the 2 or the 3 seed in the East. Probably like the 3 seed. I like John Wall a lot. Bradley Beal's really solid. Otto Porter Jr. had a really good season last year, shooting so well from 3. And then at the 4, Markieff Morris is pretty good. Good, solid role player, quality NBA starter. Dwight Howard, I think, will be good for them at the 5. And then off the bench, their main guys are going to look to be Satoransky at point guard, probably Austin Rivers playing more 2 guard, and then Jeff Green subbing in as sort of a small forward, power forward. Probably more power forward in today's NBA, honestly. And just their roster's a little bit smaller, so he'll probably have to play more power forward. And don't be surprised to see a small ball lineup that looks something like the 4 starters I said, but then sub out Dwight Howard for Jeff Green, or slot in Markieff Morris at center and Jeff Green at power forward. I could see that if they want more spacing, because Jeff Green can shoot a 3-pointer. Well, everyone on the court could shoot a 3-pointer then if you took out Dwight Howard, basically. But yeah, I think that John Wall will have a bounce back year after being injured and not playing as well and sort of being embarrassed because his team said that he really wasn't good for them. I think he'll have a bounce back year. Bradley Beal, I expect to continue to do well and develop further and be an all-star again. Dwight Howard, I'd hope to get around 14 and 12 from him on this team. Markieff Morris, you'd hope to get around 12 points a game from him maybe. And then Otto Porter, hopefully around 16 to 17 points a night. That seems a little steep for him, but I think it's fair enough. And then off the bench, Austin Rivers and Jeff Green hopefully can each pitch in about 10 points a night. That'd be good. And then points here and there from other guys like Kelly Oubre and Satoransky and Jason Smith and stuff, Jan Mahimi. But yeah, I think that they have a lot of talent. I think that outside of Boston, I'd say like outside of Boston and Philly, you could say Washington's tied for having the next most talent in the East, with Toronto and Milwaukee. So yeah, I mean, I don't get why they can't be up here as a 5th seed. Some people are going to say that they're going to be a 7 or an 8, but I don't agree with that. At the wins prediction, I'll say around 47, 48 wins for them. At the 4, I have Indiana, who I like a lot. You know, starting lineup's going to look like Darren Collison, Victor Oladipo, Bojan Bogdanovic, Thaddeus Young, Miles Turner. Main guys off the bench, Kyle O'Quinn and Tyreke Evans, who I think was a huge, great addition for the team. I like Tyreke Evans a lot. I think that he had a really good season last year. People talked about him. He went a little bit under the radar during free agency, but he's a really solid signing for this team. Now Oladipo isn't the only guy that can create his own offense. You can have Tyreke in the lineup, and he can do that as well. And this team has a lot of like possibilities as far as lineups. Sabonis is a really good guy for them off the bench as well, who I basically forgot to mention, but he's really solid off the bench. But really, those 8 guys between Collison, Oladipo, Bogdanovic, Thad Young, Miles Turner, Sabonis, Tyreke Evans, and Kyle O'Quinn, you could create a combination of lineups with really any of those guys, as long as it's not like 4 big guys on the court. But I'd really like to see an offense where they have Collison, Bogdanovic, Oladipo, Tyreke Evans, and Thad Young on the court at a given time. I think that'd be good, and that they'd be a lot faster. Maybe sub out Miles Turner for Thad Young, but either way, all those guys could shoot, and they're all relatively healthy and athletic, so you could get a lot of up and down, and they'd have great spacing, so it'd be really cool to see. I'm going to say around 50 to 51 wins for them. Pretty solid. The 4 seed, you know, they're going to be the top of the Eastern Conference. Still be looking good. Philadelphia I have as the 3 seed. I like the team a lot. Markelle Fultz, if he's healthy, he could be a big game changer. I expect to see them win about 54 games this year, 55 maybe. You know, I don't know. This team is like good, but just they need to take that next step. Joel Embiid needs to play 75 games. Ben Simmons needs to play 75. All their main key guys, I would want to play at least 70 or more games. It'll be interesting to see if they start Fultz or Redick in the regular season. They were starting Fultz in the preseason, but that might change. Who knows? But if let's say they continue starting Fultz, the lineup will look like Fultz at the 1, then Covington, then Ben Simmons at the 3, Saric at the 4, Joel Embiid at the 5, with J.J. Redick is the main man off the bench, along with Richaun Holmes. Everyone's solid. I expect them to put up all similar stats. The only guy of note that I should talk about is Fultz. If he can put up 13, 12 points a game and 5 assists a game, that'll be all they need from him. They want him to be like an all-star, and the next Damian Lillard is what he was supposed to be. But just for this individual season, if he can put up 13 and 5, I think they'd be happy. And if he can shoot 45% from the field and 33% from 3, because his shot's so messed up, that'd be a pretty good sign for the team overall. But really, a pretty similar team. They lost Bellinelli and Ilyasova, but they brought back Redick, so that's good for them. At the 2 seed, I have Toronto. I think that they'll still be really good without DeMar DeRozan. I like the acquisition of Danny Green, who was underrated in the acquisition of Kawhi Leonard. Starting lineup will probably look something like Kyle Lowry, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Serge Ibaka, Jonas Valanciunas. Main guys at the bench will look like Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, CJ Miles, Fred VanVleet, Darrell Wright. Jakob Poeltl being on at center might hurt them a little bit, but they have a plethora of guys off the bench now. And acquiring Danny Green honestly helped them in that it creates another bench guy that can come off the bench for them. You know, if he's having an off night, CJ Miles is essentially the same player. He can sub in for him. So yeah, like Toronto, again, is very deep and has a lot of talented guys. You know, you could say that they have about 6 guys off the bench who are useful, which is very rare for a team. And like in the playoffs last year, when you would have the second unit leading comebacks or just manning the fort, I think we'll see a lot more of that this year too. Kawhi is better than DeMar DeRozan, so that's an upgrade. So I expect them to have about the same record, but overall be a better team, if that makes sense. Just because I think the East got a little bit better, so I think that Toronto won't have a better record, but will be a better team. I see them winning around 58 games. They're going to be able to beat up on a lot of teams and do really well in the East, because a lot of teams at the bottom are weak, but the middle's gotten a little bit stronger. So yeah. And as the 1 seed, I have the Boston Celtics. What can be said? They have a really good coach, they have a really good starting lineup, and a really good bench, and that's really what you need to be a successful team in the NBA. And a good president of basketball ops too, and Danny Ainge, who knows how to make good moves to acquire all these talented people. Starting lineup's going to look like Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, and lastly, you're going to have Al Horford in there at center. Your bench is going to look like Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Marcus Morris, Aaron Baines, probably a little bit of Daniel Tyson, Semi Ojeleye, but not as much as those other guys. It's going to be really interesting. They have sort of a good problem in that they have a lot of guys who are good, but in that there's only one ball, and somebody's going to have to be the guy that stands on the wing during a given play. You know, is Gordon Hayward's making $30+ million a year? Is he really going to just be willing to stand on the wing and not be the guy kind of directing the offense? Kyrie can be kind of fickle, you know. What if on a certain play Jason Tatum wants to run the offense or run a play and Kyrie just has to stand there? He said, I want to run my own team, and he was sick and tired of sitting on the side of the court and watching LeBron carve up defenses, and that's why he wanted to be in Boston. Jaylen Brown, I think, is the guy that's most likely to get squeezed out of an offensive game. You know, he's probably has the least developed of these 4 guys I'm talking about. Between him, Tatum, Gordon, and Kyrie, he probably has the least developed of an offensive game. So his touches will probably be reduced to greatest. But as I say, it's a good problem to have. They'll figure it out. They've had a full offseason to deal with the crowded team. And they have solid guys off the bench. So, you know, Marcus Smart, good defensive guy. Terry Rozier, good energy guy. And then Baines and Morris are tough guys who can be good off the bench as well. So I expect this team to win about 60 to 62 games, be the number 1 seed, and be a pretty solid team overall. And that's it, guys. That's my Eastern Conference playoff teams prediction, the seeds 8 through 1. Quick review, I have Miami, Detroit, Milwaukee, Washington, Indiana, Philly, Toronto, and Boston. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and keep tuning in for these other videos I have for the previews. And if you have anything to say, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Have a good day, and bye.